While my daughter and son-in-law were scrambling to find a new apartment after losing their penthouse duplex that I'd just sold out from under them for $4.2 million, I was relaxing in my brand new oceanfront condo in Miami Beach, sipping wine, and watching the sunset with my new neighbors who actually understood that 70 doesn't mean you deserve to live in someone's basement. Before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments. Have you ever been told by your own family that you should be grateful for substandard living conditions because of your age, only to discover they had their own selfish reasons for wanting to warehouse you away? Share your story below, because today you're going to learn that sometimes the family members who think they can stick you in the basement are about to discover they just underestimated the wrong 70-year-old property owner. This story is about the morning when I realized that my own daughter, the child I'd raised as a single mother, put through law school, supported through her early career struggles, and helped establish her successful practice, had been systematically planning to move me into the basement of my own building, while she and her husband took over my penthouse apartment that I'd worked 40 years to afford. My name is Margaret Rose Sullivan, and at 70 years old, I thought I'd found the perfect living arrangement in my beautifully renovated 4-story brownstone in Boston's Back Bay neighborhood. For 3 years, this setup had seemed like an ideal solution for a widow who wanted to remain close to family while maintaining her independence and enjoying the fruits of a lifetime of hard work in real estate development. The brownstone itself was magnificent, a historic 1890s building that I'd purchased in 1985 for $180,000 and had spent decades renovating into luxury apartments. Through careful restoration and smart improvements, the property had grown to be worth $4.2 million, representing not just my home, but the culmination of my entire career as one of Boston's most successful female real estate developers. I lived in the crown jewel, a spectacular 2,800-square-foot penthouse apartment with original hardwood floors, exposed brick walls, a chef's kitchen with marble countertops, and a private rooftop terrace overlooking the Charles River. The penthouse had been my reward for 40 years of 12-hour days, weekend property showings, and the kind of relentless work ethic that had built my real estate empire from nothing. More importantly, my daughter Jessica and her husband Brad lived in the equally beautiful second-floor apartment, a 2,200-square-foot space with high ceilings, period details, and modern amenities that I'd renovated specifically for them when they'd gotten married 5 years ago. The arrangement had allowed us to be close while maintaining separate households, and I'd been charging them below-market rent as a way of supporting their young family. What I didn't know was that the daughter I'd been financially supporting for over 30 years had been quietly working with her husband to convince me that my large penthouse was becoming too much for a woman my age, and that I should be grateful for the opportunity to downsize to the basement apartment while they took over the prime living space I'd spent decades earning. The basement apartment was certainly functional, 1 to 200 square feet, with decent lighting and modern utilities, but it was still a basement. No natural light, no views, no connection to the vibrant street life that made Back Bay such a desirable neighborhood. It was the kind of space that real estate agents politely called garden level when they were trying to rent it to young professionals who couldn't afford anything better. Jessica had been presenting this proposed arrangement as a caring solution that would provide me with easier living while keeping the family together in the same building. But what I would discover was that their concern for my convenience was actually a calculated plan to take control of my most valuable asset while making me feel grateful for accepting the worst apartment in my own building. My journey to that devastating realization had begun after my husband Robert passed away 4 years ago from complications related to diabetes that had slowly stolen his health over the previous decade. Robert had been my business partner as well as my life partner, and together we'd built Sullivan & Associates Real Estate Development into one of the most respected firms in Boston's competitive market. Robert and I had met in 1975 when I'd been a young real estate agent struggling to establish myself in an industry dominated by men who often refused to take women seriously as professionals. Robert had been working as a construction manager, and we'd connected over a shared vision of transforming neglected historic properties into beautiful, livable spaces that honored their architectural heritage while meeting modern needs. "Margaret, you have such an eye for seeing potential in properties that other people dismiss," Robert had said after we'd collaborated on our first renovation project together. "Most agents just want to flip houses quickly. But you understand that real value comes from thoughtful restoration that respects the building's history." Our personal and professional partnership had been built on complementary skills and shared values about quality workmanship and historic preservation. I'd handled property acquisition, financing, and sales, while Robert had managed construction, renovation, and the complex logistics of restoring century-old buildings to modern standards. Together, we'd purchased and renovated over 60 properties throughout Boston and Cambridge, specializing in Victorian and Edwardian buildings that required the kind of careful restoration work that most developers considered too expensive and time-consuming. Our reputation had been built on projects that other firms wouldn't touch: buildings with structural challenges, historical designation requirements, and zoning complications that demanded both patience and expertise. Sullivan and Associates doesn't just renovate buildings, a feature article in Boston Magazine had noted in 1998. Margaret and Robert Sullivan preserve architectural history while creating contemporary living spaces that honor the past and serve the future. The Back Bay brownstone that had become our family home had been our masterpiece, a building so deteriorated when we'd purchased it that the previous owner had been planning to demolish it rather than deal with the extensive structural and cosmetic restoration it required. The project had taken 3 years and every dollar we could borrow, but the result had been a stunning example of how historic preservation and modern comfort could be perfectly integrated. The building's transformation had been nothing short of miraculous. When we'd first walked through the property in 1985, it had been a disaster. Crumbling plaster, rotting floorboards, antiquated electrical systems, and plumbing that hadn't been updated since the 1920s. The previous owner, an elderly man whose family had owned the building for decades, had simply given up on maintaining it and had been planning to sell to a developer who would demolish it for a modern condo building. "Mrs. Sullivan," the elderly owner had said during our initial walkthrough, "I admire your optimism, but this building is beyond saving. The structural problems alone would cost more than it's worth." But Robert and I had seen past the decay to the building's magnificent bones: soaring ceilings, original crown molding, intricate parquet floors hidden beneath decades of cheap carpeting, and the kind of solid construction that they simply didn't build anymore. We'd understood that with careful restoration and modern updates, this building could become something truly spectacular. The renovation process had been our education in both historic preservation and luxury development. We'd learned to work with specialty craftsmen who could restore original plaster medallions, refinish century-old hardwood floors, and integrate modern mechanical systems without compromising the building's historical integrity. Every detail had been researched and executed with museum-quality attention to authenticity. The original gas chandeliers had been converted to electricity while maintaining their Victorian styling. The marble fireplaces had been carefully restored and fitted with modern gas inserts. The original windows had been rebuilt rather than replaced, preserving their historical character while improving their energy efficiency. The Sullivan restoration represents the gold standard for historic preservation, the Boston Preservation Alliance had noted when they'd awarded us their Excellence in Historic Preservation Award in 1989. Every detail demonstrates that modern comfort and historical authenticity can coexist beautifully. By the time we'd completed the renovation in 1988, the brownstone had become a showcase for our company's capabilities. The building featured 4 distinct apartments, each designed to maximize the unique architectural features of its floor while providing contemporary luxury amenities. The penthouse apartment that had become my home was the crown jewel of the renovation. The top floor had been completely reconfigured to create an open-concept living space that showcased the building's original exposed brick walls and heavy timber beams. The kitchen featured custom cabinetry made from reclaimed chestnut, marble, countertops sourced from the same quarry that had supplied the original building materials, and professional-grade appliances that could handle everything from intimate dinners to large entertaining. The master bedroom suite occupied the front of the building, with 3 tall windows that provided spectacular views of the Charles River and the Boston skyline. The master bathroom had been carved out of what had originally been a small bedroom, featuring a clawfoot tub positioned to take advantage of the river views, a separate glass shower, and custom vanities that incorporated salvaged elements from the building's original fixtures. But the true masterpiece was the private rooftop terrace that we'd created by opening up the building's original roof access and installing a discreet penthouse addition that provided weather protection while maintaining the building's historical roofline. The terrace featured mature plantings in custom planters, comfortable seating areas, and an outdoor kitchen that made it perfect for entertaining during Boston's beautiful but brief summer season. The penthouse terrace represents innovative thinking about urban living, Architecture Digest had noted in their feature about the building. The Sullivans have created private outdoor space that rivals what you'd find in suburban settings, all while maintaining the historical integrity of this magnificent Back Bay building. The success of our brownstone renovation had established Sullivan & Associates as the premier firm for luxury historic preservation projects throughout Boston. Over the following decades, we'd applied the same meticulous attention to detail and commitment to authenticity to dozens of properties throughout the city's most prestigious neighborhoods. Our client base had grown to include professional athletes who wanted authentic Boston living spaces, entertainment industry figures who appreciated quality craftsmanship, and business executives who understood that properly restored historic properties represented both beautiful homes and excellent investments. Margaret and Robert Sullivan have an unmatched reputation for delivering projects that exceed expectations, a feature article in New England Home had noted in 2005. Their attention to historical detail and commitment to modern comfort has made them the go-to developers for discerning clients who want the best of both worlds. The financial success of our development business had been substantial, but more importantly, it had provided the foundation for giving Jessica every possible advantage while teaching her the values and work ethic that had made our achievements possible. Jessica Elizabeth Sullivan had been born in 1978, 3 years after Robert and I had married, and just as our business was beginning to achieve recognition in Boston's competitive real estate market. From the moment she'd taken her first breath, Jessica had been the beneficiary of every advantage we could provide. Excellent schools, cultural enrichment, travel opportunities, and most importantly, the example of parents who'd built success through education, hard work, and treating people with respect. Growing up in our restored brownstone had given Jessica an appreciation for quality, craftsmanship, and the importance of preserving beautiful things for future generations. She'd helped with small renovation projects during her childhood, learning to sand woodwork, paint trim, and understand the difference between authentic restoration and cheap imitation. Mom and Dad, Jessica had said during her 8th grade career, presentation, "You've taught me that creating something beautiful takes patience and skill. Watching you restore our building has shown me that the best things in life are worth working for." Jessica's childhood had been enriched by the international travel that had been an integral part of our business research and cultural education. We'd taken her to England to study Victorian architecture, to France to understand Second Empire design influences, and to Italy to see the Renaissance craftsmanship that had inspired many of Boston's 19th century buildings. By age 16, Jessica had visited 12 countries, spoke conversational French and Italian, and had developed the kind of cultural sophistication that came from genuine exposure to different architectural traditions rather than superficial tourist experiences. Mom and Dad traveling with you has taught me that education isn't just about what you learn in classrooms, Jessica had said during her high school valedictorian speech. You've shown me that real learning comes from understanding how people in different cultures approach beauty, craftsmanship, and creating spaces that serve families across generations. Jessica's path to becoming a successful attorney had been expensive but rewarding for our entire family. Her undergraduate education at Harvard had cost $180,000 over 4 years, even with partial merit scholarships that had recognized her academic excellence. Law school at Boston University had cost an additional $210,000 over 3 years, representing one of the most expensive legal programs in New England, but also one that had provided unparalleled training and networking opportunities. Robert and I had provided this support gladly, understanding that Jessica's legal education represented not just her individual achievement, but an investment in her ability to contribute meaningfully to society while building financial security for her own family. "We believe in investing in our daughter's future," Robert had explained to friends who'd questioned our substantial financial commitment to Jessica's legal education. "Margaret and I built our success through education, hard work, and taking calculated risks. Supporting Jessica's career development is the most meaningful way we can use our resources." Establishing Jessica's legal practice had involved another $75,000 investment in office equipment, law library resources, and initial operating costs. Corporate law required specialized legal databases, professional office space, and the kind of sophisticated infrastructure that would attract the high-quality clients necessary for building a successful practice. By 2018, Jessica's law practice had become one of the most respected corporate legal offices in Boston, serving wealthy clients who demanded the highest level of legal expertise and personalized attention. Her annual income had grown to over $280,000, and she'd developed a reputation for innovative contract negotiation and exceptional client outcomes that had made her a sought-after attorney in Boston's business community. When Jessica had married Brad Morrison in 2019, a marketing executive with his own successful career and impressive educational background, we'd been pleased with her choice and had contributed $50,000 toward their wedding and honeymoon. The wedding had been held at the Boston Harbor Hotel, a sophisticated celebration for 180 guests that had reflected both families' professional achievements and social connections. Brad had seemed intelligent, ambitious, and genuinely caring during their courtship period. He'd graduated from Northeastern University with a degree in marketing, had built a successful career in digital advertising, and had demonstrated the kind of professional competence and social sophistication that had made him an excellent match for Jessica's personality and career aspirations. "Mrs. Sullivan, I want you to know how much I appreciate the example you and Mr. Sullivan have set for Jessica," Brad had said during one of our early family dinners. "She talks constantly about the values you've instilled in her and the opportunities you've provided. I hope I can contribute to continuing those family traditions." Brad's background had been remarkably similar to our own family's emphasis on education and professional achievement. His parents were both college professors who had instilled in him the importance of intellectual curiosity, hard work, and social responsibility. He'd earned his MBA while working full-time, demonstrating the kind of determination and time management skills that had impressed both Robert and me. The early years of Jessica and Brad's marriage had been filled with regular family dinners, holiday celebrations, and the kind of multi-generational bonding that had enriched all our lives. They'd been ideal tenants in the second-floor apartment, respectful of the property's historic character, while also contributing their own touches that had made the space feel like home. "This living arrangement has worked out perfectly," Jessica had said during one of our family conversations. "We get to be close to family while maintaining our independence, and you don't have to worry about finding reliable tenants for the building." The financial arrangement had been generous for everyone involved. The second-floor apartment would have commanded $4,500 per month on the open market, but I'd been charging Jessica and Brad only $2,800 per month, well below market rate for comparable luxury accommodations in Back Bay. The reduced rent had been my way of supporting their young marriage. while ensuring the building remained occupied by people who would care for it properly. When Robert had died in 2020, our entire family's foundation had been shaken in ways that had tested everyone's strength and resilience. Robert had suffered complications from diabetes that had required multiple hospitalizations over his final year, followed by a slow decline that had given us time to prepare, but hadn't made the loss any less devastating. The funeral had been a celebration of Robert's life and achievements. Attended by over 400 people, including business associates from throughout New England, clients whose buildings we'd restored, and community members whose neighborhoods had been enhanced by our preservation work. Jessica had delivered a beautiful eulogy that had captured her father's craftsmanship, his dedication to historic preservation, and his belief that buildings were meant to serve families and communities across generations. "Dad taught me that real wealth comes from creating things that last," Jessica had said during the service. "He showed me that success isn't just about what you build. It's about how your work enhances other people's lives and contributes to preserving history for future generations." In the months following Robert's death, Jessica and Brad had been incredibly supportive during my adjustment period, visiting regularly to check on my well-being and helping me navigate the practical challenges of managing the property and continuing our business operations without Robert's partnership and expertise. Everything about my daily routine had required adjustment, from managing the building's maintenance and tenant relationships to making business decisions without Robert's input and perspective. The penthouse apartment that had been designed for 2 people suddenly felt enormous, and I'd struggled with loneliness in spaces that had been filled with conversation and shared activities for over 30 years. "Mom, you shouldn't be rattling around in that big penthouse all by yourself," Jessica had begun saying about 6 months after Robert's death, her voice filled with apparent concern. "The maintenance alone must be overwhelming, and we worry about you managing all those stairs when you're dealing with grief." Initially, I'd interpreted these comments as natural expressions of filial concern rather than the beginning of a calculated campaign to convince me that I no longer deserved to live in the apartment I'd worked 40 years to create and afford. But over the following months, Jessica and Brad's comments about my living situation had become increasingly frequent and specific, always presented as caring suggestions, but with an underlying implication that my current arrangement was somehow inappropriate or impractical for a woman my age. "Mom, wouldn't it be easier for you to have everything on one level?" Brad had suggested during one family dinner. "The basement apartment has been beautifully renovated, and you wouldn't have to deal with carrying groceries up 3 flights of stairs." The basement apartment was certainly functional, 200 square feet with decent lighting and modern utilities that we'd upgraded during the building's renovation. But it was still a basement, with limited natural light, no views, and no connection to the vibrant street life that made Back Bay such a desirable neighborhood to live in. The apartment had been designed as rental income property, the kind of space that appealed to young professionals who prioritized location and affordability over luxury amenities. It featured a compact but well-designed kitchen, a comfortable living area, 1 bedroom, and a modern bathroom, all finished with quality materials, but without the architectural details and spacious layouts that characterized the upper floors. The basement apartment would be perfect for someone who wants to simplify their living arrangements, Jessica had continued the campaign. "You'd have everything you need on 1 floor, plus you'd be helping the family use the building more efficiently." The phrase, "use the building more efficiently," had been particularly telling, suggesting that my occupation of the penthouse apartment was somehow wasteful or inappropriate, rather than the natural result of owning the building and having worked decades to afford the best apartment in it. What I hadn't understood at the time was that Jessica and Brad had been developing detailed plans for how the building could be reorganized to better serve what they considered the family's collective needs, with particular emphasis on ensuring that the most desirable living spaces went to the family members who were still building their careers rather than those who were winding down. The suggestion that I should consider moving to the basement apartment had emerged gradually, always presented as a temporary solution that would provide me with easier living while allowing the family to maximize the building's potential during a transitional period. "Mom, we're not suggesting this as a permanent arrangement," Jessica had assured me during one of our conversations about the topic. "We just think it might be good for you to try a simpler living situation while you're adjusting to life without Dad. You could always move back upstairs if the basement doesn't work out." But even as she'd been presenting the basement move as a temporary experiment, Jessica had also been developing increasingly detailed plans for how she and Brad could help me by taking over management of the building's upper apartments, ostensibly, to reduce my administrative burden while ensuring the property remained profitable. "Brad and I have been talking about this extensively," Jessica had explained, "and we think we could handle the tenant management and maintenance coordination for the building. That way you wouldn't have to worry about dealing with contractors, rent collection, or property management issues." The offer to help with building management had been accompanied by suggestions that the penthouse apartment could be converted into a luxury rental that would generate substantial income, providing me with additional financial security while freeing me from the responsibilities of maintaining such a large living space. The penthouse could easily rent for $8,000 per month to the right tenant, Brad had pointed out. That's almost $100,000 per year in additional income that could support your retirement, while also ensuring that the apartment gets the use and appreciation it deserves. Standing in my penthouse that morning, still processing the mounting pressure I'd been receiving to downsize my living situation for the supposed benefit of the entire family, I had no idea that the daughter I'd sacrificed for and invested in was about to learn the most expensive lesson of her legal career about property: rights, respect for elders, and the consequences of trying to manipulate someone who actually owned the building she was trying to control. Sometimes the people who think they can convince you to accept less than you deserve are about to discover they just tried to swindle the wrong property owner. Jessica and Brad were about to learn that suggesting a 70-year-old real estate developer should be grateful for basement living was the biggest mistake they'd ever made in their entitled lives. The foundation they were planning to undermine, my property ownership, my business expertise, my legal knowledge, and my absolute refusal to accept their limitations on how I should live in my own building, was actually going to become the platform from which I would launch the most expensive real estate lesson they'd ever receive: about respecting property owners and their rights. What Jessica and Brad hadn't anticipated was that their plan to warehouse me in the basement had one fatal flaw. I actually owned the entire building, possessed decades of real estate experience, and had the legal knowledge and financial resources to ensure they regretted ever suggesting that the woman who'd built this property empire should be grateful for the worst apartment in her own building. Standing in my penthouse that morning, still processing the mounting pressure I'd been receiving to downsize my living situation for the supposed benefit of the entire family, I felt the weight of my entire life's work being questioned by people who'd never built anything themselves. But to understand how I'd reached this point of family tension over where I should live in my own building, you need to know about the 4 decades of relentless work, strategic planning, and business expertise that had created the very real estate empire Jessica and Brad were now trying to convince me I was too old to properly manage. My journey to becoming one of Boston's most successful female real estate developers had begun in 1973, when I'd graduated from Boston University with a bachelor's degree in business administration and an absolute determination to prove that women could succeed in industries that had been traditionally dominated by men who often refused to take female professionals seriously. The real estate world of the 1970s had been particularly challenging for women, with most firms relegating female agents to residential sales while reserving commercial development and investment opportunities for their male colleagues. But I'd understood from my first week in the industry that success would require not just working harder than my male competitors, but also developing expertise they couldn't match and building relationships they couldn't access. My father, Thomas Richardson, had been a professor of economics at Boston College specializing in urban development theory and post-war economic reconstruction. He'd spent his career studying the complex relationships between real estate markets, neighborhood development, and economic growth, and he'd instilled in me from an early age the understanding that property development required not just financial acumen but genuine appreciation for how buildings and neighborhoods influenced people's lives. "Margaret," my father had said during one of our regular dinner table discussions about Boston's changing neighborhoods, "the developers who will thrive in the coming decades will be those who understand that buildings aren't just investments. They're the foundation for how families live, work, and build their communities." My mother, Catherine Richardson, had been equally influential in shaping my understanding of what was possible for an educated woman in the changing economy of the 1970s. She'd earned a master's degree in art history from Radcliffe College in 1952, at a time when advanced education for women was still considered unusual, and she'd worked as a curator for several Boston-area museums while raising me and my 2 younger brothers. "Darling," my mother had told me during my college years, "never let anyone convince you that being feminine means being passive or accepting limitations. The most successful women I know are those who've combined their natural interpersonal skills with serious business knowledge and an absolute refusal to accept other people's assumptions about what women can achieve." The Richardson household had been intellectually stimulating and culturally sophisticated in ways that had prepared me for the complex negotiations and relationship building that would characterize my real estate career. Dinner conversations had regularly included discussions of urban planning, architectural history, economic trends, and cultural developments that were shaping Boston's neighborhoods and real estate markets. Our home had been filled with architectural books, urban planning documents, and the kind of sophisticated analysis of real estate trends that had made the property development world seem accessible and exciting rather than intimidating and male-dominated. By age 18, I'd already developed a sophisticated understanding of how zoning regulations, historical preservation requirements, and neighborhood development patterns influenced property values and investment opportunities. This knowledge would prove crucial when I'd entered the real estate industry and needed to demonstrate expertise that went beyond basic sales skills. My first position had been with Morrison and Associates, a mid-sized real estate firm that specialized in residential sales throughout Boston's most desirable neighborhoods. The job had paid $12,000 per year, plus commissions, representing barely enough income to support an independent lifestyle, but it had provided essential training in property evaluation, client relations, and the complex legal and financial processes that governed real estate transactions. "Miss Richardson," my supervisor had said during my first performance review, "you have an unusual combination of analytical intelligence and interpersonal skills that could take you far in this industry. Most agents either understand numbers or understand people, but you clearly grasp both the financial and emotional aspects of real estate decisions." During my 3 years at Morrison & Associates, I'd specialized in historic properties that required buyers with both financial resources and appreciation for architectural authenticity. These transactions had been more complex than typical residential sales, involving historical preservation requirements, specialized financing, and the kind of educated clients who demanded agents with genuine knowledge about period architecture and restoration challenges. "Margaret has become our go-to agent for clients who are serious about historic properties," the firm's senior partner had noted in a client newsletter. Her knowledge of Victorian and Edwardian architecture, combined with her understanding of restoration costs and historical preservation requirements, makes her invaluable for buyers who want authentic period homes. My specialty in historic properties had provided exposure to Boston's most sophisticated real estate clients, professional couples, business executives, and cultural figures who had both the financial resources and the cultural knowledge to appreciate quality restoration work. These relationships had been essential for building the kind of client base that would support more ambitious development projects, but more importantly, working with historic properties had taught me to see potential in buildings that other agents, dismissed as too challenging or expensive to restore. I'd learned to recognize good bones beneath decades of neglect, to understand which architectural problems were serious structural issues and which were merely cosmetic challenges that could be addressed through careful renovation. Margaret has an exceptional eye for seeing what a property could become rather than just what it currently is, one of my regular clients had observed. She understands that the most rewarding real estate investments often require vision and patience rather than just finding properties that are already perfect. The decision to leave Morrison & Associates and establish my own real estate practice had been both professionally and financially risky. But by 1976, I'd saved $25,000 and had developed enough client relationships to support an independent practice. The transition had required incorporating as Sullivan Real Estate Services, leasing office space, and developing the kind of professional infrastructure that would allow me to compete with established firms while specializing in the historic property niche I'd been developing. My first major success as an independent agent had been the sale of a magnificent Victorian mansion in Beacon Hill that had been on the market for over 2 years with other agents. The property had required a buyer who could appreciate its architectural significance while also having the financial resources and patience necessary for extensive restoration work. "Mrs. Sullivan," the seller had said after I'd successfully negotiated the sale, "you found exactly the right buyer for this property. Other agents kept showing it to people who wanted a move-in ready house, but you understood that this building needed someone who would love it enough to restore it properly." The Beacon Hill sale had generated a $32,000 commission and had established my reputation as the agent who could handle Boston's most challenging historic properties. More importantly, it had provided capital for expanding my business and beginning to consider property development rather than just sales. The real transformation in my career had come in 1978, when I'd encountered my first development opportunity, a deteriorated row house in the South End that was being sold for $35,000 because previous buyers had been deterred by its extensive renovation requirements. The building had good bones and was located in a neighborhood that was beginning to attract young professionals who appreciated historic architecture, but it required a complete restoration that would cost at least $60,000. "Margaret, this is a huge risk," my accountant had warned when I'd proposed purchasing the property for renovation and resale. "You'd be investing everything you've saved, plus taking on substantial debt, for a project that could easily go over budget or fail to find a buyer." But I'd seen potential that others had missed. The South End was experiencing the early stages of gentrification, with young professionals discovering that they could purchase and restore historic properties for less than the cost of comparable space in more established neighborhoods. The row house was structurally sound and featured the kind of period details that couldn't be replicated in modern construction. The renovation had taken 8 months and had required learning everything from plaster restoration techniques to 19th-century plumbing systems. I'd worked with specialty contractors who understood historic buildings, researched period-appropriate materials and fixtures, and developed relationships with craftsmen who could restore original architectural details to museum-quality standards. "Miss Sullivan clearly understands that historic renovation isn't just about making old buildings functional," the contractor I'd worked with had observed. "She appreciates that these buildings represent craftsmanship and design traditions that should be preserved and celebrated rather than just covered up with modern materials." The completed renovation had been spectacular. Every original detail carefully restored, modern systems discreetly integrated, and the entire space designed to showcase the building's Victorian character while providing contemporary comfort and convenience. The project had been featured in Boston Home Magazine and had sold within 2 weeks for $125,000, generating a profit of $22,000 after all expenses. Sullivan's South End renovation demonstrates that historic preservation and modern comfort can be perfectly integrated, the magazine article had noted. Every detail has been carefully researched and authentically restored, but the building also includes contemporary amenities that meet today's standards for luxury living. The success of the South End project had established my reputation as a developer who could handle complex historic renovations while also providing the financial foundation for larger and more ambitious projects. Over the following 3 years, I'd purchased and renovated 6 additional properties throughout Boston, developing expertise in everything from zoning regulations and building codes to specialty contractors and period-appropriate materials. Each project had been more complex and profitable than the previous one, building both my financial resources and my reputation as the developer who could transform challenging historic properties into showplace homes that commanded premium prices from discerning buyers. By 1981, when I'd met Robert Sullivan during our collaboration on a particularly complex Victorian mansion renovation in Cambridge, I'd established Sullivan Real Estate Services as one of Boston's most respected firms for luxury historic property development. My projects had been featured in multiple national publications, and I'd developed waiting lists of clients who wanted custom historic renovations rather than generic modern construction. Robert had been working as a construction manager for Brennan and Associates, a firm that specialized in high-end residential construction and historic restoration. His background had been exactly what I'd needed to expand my development business: deep knowledge of construction techniques, relationships with specialty contractors, and the kind of project management skills that were essential for delivering complex renovations on time and within budget. "Margaret, you have a remarkable understanding of what makes historic properties special," Robert had said during our first business meeting. "Most developers either ignore period details or try to fake them with modern reproductions. But you clearly appreciate that authentic restoration requires both historical knowledge and serious craftsmanship." Our professional partnership had been built on complementary skills and shared values about quality workmanship and historic preservation. I'd handled property acquisition, financing, design planning, and sales, while Robert had managed construction, coordinated with specialty contractors, and ensured that every detail met the highest standards for both historical authenticity and modern functionality. Sullivan and Associates represents a new model for historic property development, a feature article in New England Builder had noted in 1983. Margaret and Robert Sullivan combine business expertise with genuine appreciation for architectural history, creating projects that serve as both luxury homes and examples of how historic preservation can be commercially successful. Our marriage in 1982 had been both a personal celebration and a business milestone, combining our individual expertise into a partnership that would define both our careers and our approach to life. The wedding had been held at the Boston Public Library, a sophisticated but intimate celebration for 120 family members, business associates, and friends who understood that they were witnessing not just a marriage, but the formation of a business partnership that would have significant impact in Boston's real estate market. "Margaret and Robert are perfectly matched," my father had said during his wedding toast. "They share not just personal affection, but professional vision and the kind of complementary skills that will allow them to achieve things together that neither could accomplish alone." Our honeymoon had been a month-long architectural and cultural exploration trip through England and Scotland, visiting historic properties that had been restored by preservation organizations and private developers who shared our commitment to maintaining architectural authenticity while adapting buildings for contemporary use. The trip had been our first major collaboration outside of specific business projects, combining romantic adventure with serious architectural education in ways that had established the pattern for our entire marriage. We'd studied restoration techniques at National Trust properties, met with craftsmen who specialized in period construction methods, and developed relationships with suppliers who could provide authentic materials for our future projects. "Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan, your appreciation for traditional building techniques is remarkable," one of the master craftsmen we'd met in the Cotswolds had told us. "Most American developers are only interested in shortcuts and modern materials. But you understand that real quality comes from respecting traditional methods and using authentic materials." The early years of building Sullivan and Associates real estate development had been challenging but exhilarating, requiring us to work 70-hour weeks while investing every dollar we could accumulate in property acquisition, renovation materials, and the specialized equipment necessary for historic restoration work. Our business plan had been elegant in its focus: identify historic properties that had been neglected or inadequately maintained, purchase them at below-market prices, restore them to museum-quality standards using authentic materials and traditional techniques, and market them to clients who understood that properly restored historic properties represented both beautiful homes and excellent long-term investments. The first major success had been the Back Bay brownstone that would eventually become our family home, a project so complex and transformative that it had established our reputation as the premier firm for luxury historic restoration throughout New England. By 1985, when we'd purchased the brownstone for $180,000, Sullivan and Associates had completed 12 successful renovation projects and had developed waiting lists of both properties we wanted to acquire and clients who wanted our services. The brownstone represented our most ambitious project to date, a building that required not just renovation, but complete structural restoration and reconfiguration into luxury apartments. The 3-year renovation process had been our education in large-scale historic preservation and luxury property development. We'd worked with structural engineers who specialized in 19th-century construction, historical preservation consultants who could ensure our work met National Register standards, and craftsmen whose skills had been passed down through generations of traditional building trades. Every aspect of the project had been documented and executed with museum-quality attention to detail. Original architectural drawings had been researched at the Boston Public Library's archives. Period-appropriate materials had been sourced from specialty suppliers throughout New England and Europe. Modern mechanical systems had been integrated, using techniques that preserved the building's historical integrity while providing contemporary comfort and efficiency. The Sullivan Brownstone restoration represents the gold standard for historic preservation in Boston. The Boston Preservation Alliance had noted when they'd awarded us their Excellence in Historic Preservation Award in 1989. Every detail demonstrates that modern comfort and historical authenticity can coexist beautifully when developers truly understand both the technical and cultural aspects of preservation work. The completed brownstone had featured 4 distinct apartments, each designed to maximize the unique architectural features of its floor while providing contemporary luxury amenities. The ground floor had been configured as a spacious family apartment with direct garden access. The second floor had featured the soaring ceilings and formal proportions that made it perfect for entertaining. The third floor had been designed as a comfortable apartment for professional couples. And the penthouse had been our masterpiece, a spectacular living space that showcased every aspect of our restoration expertise. The penthouse apartment had been designed specifically as our personal residence, incorporating every lesson we'd learned about luxury historic living during our 7 years of professional development work. The space had featured an open-concept living area that showcased original exposed brick walls and heavy timber beams, a gourmet kitchen with custom cabinetry made from reclaimed materials, and a master suite that provided spectacular views while maintaining the building's period character. But the true innovation had been the private rooftop terrace that we'd created by opening up the building's original roof access and installing a discreet penthouse addition that provided weather protection, while maintaining the building's historical roofline. The terrace had featured mature plantings, comfortable seating areas, and an outdoor kitchen that had made it perfect for entertaining during Boston's brief but beautiful summer season. The penthouse terrace represents innovative thinking about urban living. Architecture Digest had noted in their 12-page feature about our brownstone restoration. The Sullivans have created private outdoor space that rivals suburban estates, all while maintaining the historical integrity of this magnificent Back Bay building. The Architecture Digest feature had been a watershed moment for Sullivan and Associates. generating national recognition and inquiries from potential clients throughout the United States who wanted our expertise for their own historic property projects. Over the following decade, we'd expanded our business to include consulting work for preservation organizations, educational institutions, and private clients from Boston to Washington, D.C., who understood that our restoration expertise represented a unique combination of historical knowledge and luxury development capabilities. Sullivan and Associates has established a national reputation for projects that set new standards for historic preservation. A feature article in Traditional Building magazine had noted in 1995. Margaret and Robert Sullivan's attention to historical detail and commitment to authentic craftsmanship has made them the go-to developers for clients who want museum-quality restoration work. Our client base had grown to include professional athletes who wanted authentic Boston living spaces, entertainment industry figures who appreciated quality craftsmanship, business executives who understood that properly restored historic properties represented excellent investments, and cultural institutions that needed specialized expertise for their own preservation projects. The financial success had been substantial. By 2000, Sullivan and Associates had completed over 40 projects with a combined value of $85 million. And our personal net worth had grown to over $3 million. But more importantly, we'd established a business model that demonstrated historic preservation could be both culturally valuable and commercially successful when executed with genuine expertise and commitment to quality. Margaret and Robert Sullivan have proven that historic preservation isn't just about maintaining old buildings, a Boston Globe business feature had noted in 2001. They've created a development model that generates substantial profits while also contributing to neighborhood revitalization and architectural preservation that benefits entire communities. Throughout our business success, Robert and I had remained committed to providing Jessica with every possible advantage, while also teaching her the values and work ethic that had made our achievements possible. We'd included Jessica in appropriate aspects of our business operations from an early age, exposing her to different aspects of real estate development and historic preservation that had shaped her understanding of quality work and business integrity. Mom and Dad, working on your projects has taught me that success comes from paying attention to details and treating people with respect, Jessica had said during her college graduation speech. You've shown me that the most satisfying work involves creating things that will be beautiful and valuable for generations. Jessica's exposure to our business operations had given her practical understanding of contract negotiation, project management, and the importance of maintaining relationships with clients, contractors, and community members who could support long-term business success. Jessica has been incredibly fortunate to grow up in a family that values both business success and cultural preservation, her high school guidance counselor had observed. Her exposure to historic architecture and business development gives her advantages that will serve her well, regardless of what career path she chooses. The financial investment in Jessica's legal education had been substantial, but it had been consistent with our family's values about education as the foundation for a meaningful life. We'd viewed the law school expenses not as financial burden, but as investment in Jessica's ability to contribute meaningfully to society while achieving the kind of professional success that would provide security for her own family. By 2015, when Jessica had established her own successful law practice, Sullivan and Associates had achieved maturity as one of New England's most respected historic preservation and luxury development firms. Our portfolio had included projects throughout Boston, Cambridge, Salem, and Providence, and we'd been recognized as experts whose opinion was sought by preservation organizations, zoning boards, and cultural institutions throughout the region. The Sullivans have created a legacy that extends far beyond their individual projects. A retrospective article in Boston Magazine had noted in 2018. Their commitment to authentic historic preservation has influenced an entire generation of developers and has contributed to neighborhood revitalization efforts that have enhanced property values and community character throughout New England. Standing in my penthouse that morning, surrounded by the architectural details and quality craftsmanship that represented 40 years of expertise and hard work, I'd had no understanding that the daughter I'd invested in so heavily was viewing my continued residence in this space as an inefficient use of valuable real estate rather than as the natural result of owning the building and having worked decades to afford the best apartment in it. The real estate expertise, business acumen, legal knowledge, and personal determination that Jessica and Brad were trying to manipulate were actually going to become the foundation for teaching them the most expensive lesson of their professional lives about property rights, respect for elders, and the consequences of trying to control someone who'd spent decades proving that success comes from building things rather than just inheriting them. Sometimes the people who think they know what's best for your living situation are actually the people who understand least about how real estate actually works. Jessica and Brad were about to discover that underestimating a 70-year-old woman who'd built a real estate empire from nothing was the biggest mistake they'd ever made in their entitled lives. Standing in my penthouse that morning, still, processing Jessica and Brad's increasingly systematic pressure to move me into the basement, I couldn't help but remember how different things had been just 2 years ago, when they'd first moved into the second-floor apartment and had spoken with such genuine enthusiasm about our multi-generational living arrangement and their commitment to supporting my independence while honoring the legacy Robert and I had built together. It was a period when our family relationships had seemed to represent the perfect balance of closeness and autonomy, a time when Jessica and Brad had appeared genuinely grateful for the opportunities I'd provided while also contributing meaningfully to our shared family life. The conversation that had led to their moving into the brownstone had occurred in the spring of 2020, just 3 months after Robert's death, when Jessica and Brad had been living in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Cambridge and had been struggling with the high cost of Boston area housing, despite their combined professional incomes of over $400,000 annually. "Mom," Jessica had said during one of our regular Sunday dinners, "Brad and I have been talking about our housing situation, and we're wondering if you'd consider renting us one of the apartments in the brownstone. We know the second floor is currently vacant, and we think it could be a wonderful arrangement for everyone." The proposal had seemed like the perfect solution to multiple challenges we'd all been facing. I'd been struggling with the loneliness and practical difficulties of managing a 4-story building by myself, while Jessica and Brad had been dealing with the financial strain of paying $4,200 per month for an apartment that was far smaller and less elegant than what they could have in my building for substantially less money. "The second-floor apartment would be perfect for us," Brad had continued, his enthusiasm genuine and infectious. "We love the historic character. The space is exactly what we need for starting a family, and being close to you would mean we could help with building maintenance and provide company during this difficult transition period." The financial arrangements we'd discussed had been generous but realistic for everyone involved. The second-floor apartment featured 2,200 square feet of beautifully restored space with soaring ceilings, original hardwood floors, and period details that couldn't be found in modern construction. Comparable apartments in Back Bay were renting for $5,500 to $6,000 per month, but I'd offered to rent to Jessica and Brad for $3,200 per month, a substantial discount that would save them over $12,000 annually, while providing me with reliable rental income and the comfort of having family nearby. "Mom, we're so grateful for this opportunity," Jessica had said during our lease signing meeting. "The reduced rent will allow us to save for a house down payment while living in a space that's far more beautiful than anything we could afford on the open market. And more importantly, we'll be able to spend time with you and help ensure the building is properly maintained." But what had impressed me most about Jessica and Brad's initial approach to the living arrangement had been their explicit respect for my independence and their understanding that proximity didn't mean they would have any role in my personal decisions about how to live in my own building. "We want to be clear that we're tenants, not household managers," Brad had said during one of our early conversations about the arrangement. "This is your building, your home, and your life. We're just grateful to be able to live here and contribute to keeping the family together during this transition. Jessica had been equally clear about respecting boundaries, while also expressing genuine enthusiasm for the opportunity to learn more about the building's history and the real estate expertise that Robert and I had developed over our careers. "Mom, I know I've been focused on my legal career and haven't always appreciated the complexity of what you and Dad built together," Jessica had said. "Living in the building will give me a chance to understand the property management side of real estate development and learn about historic preservation in ways that could be valuable for my own future investments." During those first months after Jessica and Brad had moved into the second-floor apartment, our family relationships had reached what I now recognize as their peak harmony. The arrangement had provided exactly the balance of independence and connection that we'd all hoped for, with regular but not overwhelming interaction and mutual support that had benefited everyone while respecting individual autonomy. The practical benefits had been immediate and substantial. Jessica and Brad had been ideal tenants, respectful of the building's historic character, careful with the original architectural details, and helpful with small maintenance issues that would have required me to coordinate with contractors. Their presence had also provided security and companionship during the long Boston winters when the building could feel isolated and overwhelming for a single person. "This arrangement is working out even better than we hoped," I'd told my friend Catherine Morrison during one of our regular coffee meetings. "Jessica and Brad are wonderful tenants, and having family nearby has made the building feel like a home again, rather than just a big empty space filled with memories." The financial aspects of the arrangement had also been working well for everyone involved. The $3,200 monthly rent had provided me with steady income while representing substantial savings for Jessica and Brad compared to comparable apartments in the neighborhood. More importantly, they'd been consistently reliable with payments and had even offered to handle some building maintenance expenses as a way of contributing beyond their rent obligations. "Mom, we'd like to pay for updating the building's front entrance lighting," Brad had proposed during one of our monthly building meetings. "The current fixtures are fine, but we think period-appropriate lanterns would enhance the building's historic character while improving security for all the tenants." Their investment in building improvements had demonstrated genuine appreciation for the property and had shown that they understood how proper maintenance contributed to both the building's character and its long-term value. The entrance lighting project had cost $3,400 and had been completed with careful attention to historical authenticity that had enhanced the building's curb appeal. But more than practical benefits, the early period of our living arrangement had provided opportunities for meaningful family bonding and cultural sharing that had enriched all our lives. Jessica and Brad had regularly joined me for dinner in the penthouse, creating opportunities for conversation about their work, my real estate projects, and shared interests in Boston's cultural and architectural heritage. "Mom, these family dinners have become the highlight of our week," Jessica had said during one particularly enjoyable evening. "It's wonderful to have regular time to talk about substantive topics and share what's happening in our professional lives. I feel like I'm learning so much about business and real estate from listening to your experiences." The conversations had often focused on the building's renovation history, with Jessica and Brad expressing genuine interest in understanding the restoration techniques and historic preservation principles that Robert and I had applied throughout the project. I'd enjoyed sharing stories about the challenges we'd overcome, the craftsmen we'd worked with, and the research that had informed our decisions about materials and design details. "The work you and Dad did on this building is incredible," Brad had observed during one of our architectural discussions. "Every detail shows such careful thought about balancing historical authenticity with modern functionality. It's like living in a museum, but one that's designed for contemporary family life." These appreciation conversations had been particularly meaningful because they demonstrated that Jessica and Brad understood the building represented not just valuable real estate, but also the culmination of Robert's and my professional expertise and creative vision. Their respect for our work had made me feel that the building was in caring hands, and that our preservation efforts would be appreciated by future generations. The social aspects of our arrangement had also been rewarding, with Jessica and Brad often including me in their entertaining and introducing me to their professional friends who'd been impressed by the building's historic character and restoration quality. These gatherings had provided opportunities for me to share knowledge about Boston's architectural history, while also staying connected to younger professionals who brought energy and contemporary perspectives to our family life. "Mrs. Sullivan, your building is absolutely stunning," one of Jessica's law school classmates had said during a dinner party in the second-floor apartment. "The restoration work is museum quality, and the way you've maintained the historical integrity while incorporating modern amenities is really inspiring." The recognition from Jessica's and Brad's friends had been personally satisfying, while also validating the investment decisions Robert and I had made throughout our renovation work. It had been gratifying to see that younger professionals appreciated quality craftsmanship and historical authenticity, rather than just viewing older buildings as outdated or inconvenient. One of the most meaningful aspects of our early living arrangement had been Jessica's growing interest in real estate investment and her requests for guidance about building her own property portfolio. She'd begun asking detailed questions about market analysis, renovation budgeting, and the factors that influenced long-term property values in different Boston neighborhoods. "Mom, I've been thinking about purchasing a small property that I could renovate as an investment project," Jessica had said during one of our business discussions. "I know I don't have your expertise, but I'd love to learn from your experience and maybe start building wealth through real estate like you and Dad did." Her interest in real estate investment had been exactly what Robert and I had hoped Jessica would develop: an appreciation for property ownership as both financial security and creative expression. I'd been pleased to share knowledge about market trends, renovation contractors, and the regulatory requirements that governed historic property development in Boston. "Jessica, real estate investment can be incredibly rewarding when you approach it with the right knowledge and patience," I'd explained during one of our mentoring sessions. "The key is understanding that property development isn't just about financial returns. It's about creating spaces that serve families and contribute to neighborhood character." Over the following months, Jessica and I had visited several properties that were available for purchase, with me providing guidance about structural assessment, renovation potential, and market positioning that would help her make informed investment decisions. These property tours had been enjoyable bonding experiences that had allowed me to share practical knowledge while supporting Jessica's professional and financial development. "Mom, I'm learning so much from these property visits," Jessica had said after we'd toured a Victorian cottage in Jamaica Plain that she'd been considering. "You see details and potential problems that I would never notice, and your explanations about renovation costs and market trends are like getting a masterclass in real estate investment." The property investment mentoring had culminated in Jessica's purchase of a small two-family home in Somerville that she'd renovated with my guidance and had successfully rented to young professionals who appreciated the building's restored character and convenient location. The project had generated positive cash flow while also providing Jessica with hands-on experience in property management and tenant relations. Jessica's first investment property demonstrates that she's inherited your eye for renovation potential, Brad had observed after the Somerville project had been completed. "She's applied everything you taught her about balancing historical character with modern functionality, and the results are really impressive." The success of Jessica's first real estate investment had strengthened our family bonds while also providing practical validation of the knowledge transfer that had been occurring through our regular business discussions. I'd been proud to see Jessica applying principles Robert and I had developed while also bringing her own legal expertise and contemporary perspective to property development challenges. During this golden period of our family relationship, Brad had also been contributing meaningfully to our shared activities and had demonstrated genuine appreciation for the opportunities the living arrangement had provided. His marketing expertise had been valuable for some of my ongoing business projects, and he'd offered helpful insights about contemporary approaches to property marketing and tenant relations. "Margaret, your approach to property management is Really sophisticated, Brad had said during one of our building administration discussions. The way you maintain relationships with long-term tenants while ensuring the building's character is preserved shows real business intelligence. Brad's professional perspective had been particularly helpful when I'd been considering modernizing some of the building's common areas to attract younger tenants while maintaining historical authenticity. His understanding of contemporary design, trends, and marketing strategies had helped me identify improvements that would enhance the building's appeal without compromising its historic character. The building's historical features are actually major selling points for educated young professionals, Brad had explained. Rather than hiding the period details, we should emphasize them as luxury amenities that can't be found in modern construction. His marketing insights had informed my decision to invest $15,000 in updating the building's entrance hall and common areas with period-appropriate lighting, restored original fixtures, and improved security systems that enhanced both functionality and historical atmosphere. The improvements had increased tenant satisfaction, while also supporting higher rental rates that had improved the building's financial performance. The renovation of the common areas had been a collaborative family project, with Jessica providing legal guidance about building codes and tenant rights, Brad contributing marketing and design insights, and me coordinating with contractors and ensuring historical authenticity. The successful completion of the project had demonstrated how our different professional skills could complement each other for mutual benefit. This lobby renovation project shows what we can accomplish when we combine our different areas of expertise, Jessica had said during the project's completion celebration. Mom's restoration knowledge, Brad's design sense, and my legal background created results that none of us could have achieved individually. The collaborative success had encouraged us to begin discussing more ambitious improvement projects, including updating the building's HVAC systems, modernizing the laundry facilities, and creating shared outdoor space that would enhance the building's appeal while maintaining its residential character. We should think about this building as a long-term family asset that we're all invested in improving, Brad had suggested during one of our planning conversations. The improvements we make today will benefit everyone who lives here while also supporting the building's long-term value appreciation. These planning discussions had felt like natural extensions of the family business collaboration that Robert and I had modeled throughout Jessica's childhood. I'd been pleased to see Jessica and Brad taking serious interest in property stewardship and thinking strategically about how building improvements could serve both immediate needs and long-term financial goals. The social dimensions of our family arrangement had also been thriving during this period, with regular holiday celebrations, birthday parties, and informal gatherings that had made the building feel like a true family home, rather than just a rental property with related tenants. I love how this building brings our family together, Jessica had said during our Thanksgiving dinner in 2021. Having separate apartments gives us privacy and independence, but being in the same building means we can share meals and celebrations without anyone feeling imposed upon. The holiday celebrations had been particularly meaningful, combining the intimate scale of immediate family with the elegant settings that the building's restored spaces provided. Christmas dinner in the penthouse, Easter brunch in the second floor, apartment and summer barbecues on the rooftop terrace had created traditions that had honored both our family relationships and the building's architectural character. These family gatherings show how historic buildings are meant to be used, Brad had observed during one of our summer rooftop parties. The spaces are designed for entertaining and bringing people together across generations. The entertaining success had also provided opportunities for Jessica and Brad to invite their professional colleagues and friends to family events, creating social connections that had enhanced both their careers and my own community relationships. The building had become known among their social circle as a special place where historical architecture and contemporary family life were perfectly integrated. Your building has become legendary among our friends, one of Brad's marketing colleagues had told me during a holiday party. Everyone wants to see the restoration work and hear about the historical preservation techniques you used. It's like having a private museum that's also a family home. The community recognition had been gratifying while also demonstrating that our family's approach to historic preservation was contributing positively to Boston's cultural heritage and architectural character. The building had been featured in neighborhood tour programs and had been recognized by preservation organizations as an example of how historic properties could be maintained for contemporary family use. During this golden period, Jessica and Brad had also been incredibly supportive of my personal interests and had encouraged my continued involvement in professional activities that kept me connected to Boston's real estate and preservation communities. They'd often attended lecture, series, preservation society meetings, and cultural events with me, showing genuine interest in topics that had been central to my career. "Mom, we love going to these preservation events with you," Jessica had said after we'd attended a lecture about Victorian architecture at the Boston Public Library. "Your expertise and professional relationships in this community are really impressive, and we enjoy learning about topics we'd never encounter in our own work." Their support for my professional activities had been accompanied by encouragement for my personal hobbies and interests, including my photography of historic buildings, my collection of architectural books, and my volunteer work with preservation organizations that were working to protect Boston's historic neighborhoods. "Margaret, your photography of historic buildings is really artistic," Brad had said while looking through one of my photo albums. "You have such an eye for capturing architectural details and the character of different neighborhoods. Have you ever considered displaying these photos or publishing them?" The encouragement had led to my participation in several photography exhibitions focused on Boston's architectural heritage, with my images being featured in Preservation Society publications and neighborhood newsletters that had celebrated the city's historic building stock. The recognition had been personally fulfilling while also contributing to public awareness about the importance of historic preservation. The financial aspects of our arrangement had also been working smoothly during this period, with Jessica and Brad consistently paying rent on time while also contributing to building improvements and maintenance expenses that had reduced my property management burden. "We want to be model tenants and family members," Jessica had said during one of our quarterly building meetings. "Paying rent reliably and contributing to building improvements is the least we can do to show our appreciation for this arrangement." Their financial reliability had been accompanied by respectful communication about any building issues or maintenance needs, with Jessica and Brad taking initiative to coordinate with contractors and handle small repairs rather than expecting me to manage every detail of building operations. "Brad and I can handle the coordination for updating the third-floor apartment's bathroom," Jessica had offered when the space had become vacant and had needed renovation before re-renting. "We know your preferred contractors, and we understand the historical preservation standards that need to be maintained." Their willingness to take on property management responsibilities had been genuinely helpful, while also demonstrating their understanding of the work required to maintain a historic building properly. The bathroom renovation had been completed successfully and within budget, with careful attention to period-appropriate materials and fixtures that had maintained the building's authentic character. By the end of 2021, our family living arrangement had seemed like a complete success that was benefiting everyone while honoring the building's historic character and supporting our shared family values. Jessica and Brad had established themselves as ideal tenants who contributed positively to the building's community while respecting my independence and authority as the property owner. "This has been the best year of our marriage," Brad had said during our New Year's Eve celebration. "Living in this beautiful building, being close to family, and having the opportunity to learn about real estate investment has enriched our lives in ways we never anticipated." Jessica had been equally enthusiastic about how the arrangement was supporting both her personal and professional goals, while strengthening our family relationships in meaningful ways. "Mom, this living situation has given me so much," Jessica had said during our year-end family reflection. "I've learned about property management, historic preservation, and business planning from watching how you handle the building. But more importantly, I've gotten to spend regular time with you and appreciate everything you accomplished with Dad." The appreciation and respect they'd shown during this golden period had made me confident that our family relationships were built on solid foundations of mutual regard and shared values that would sustain us through any challenges that might arise. I'd felt proud of how Jessica had developed as both a professional and a family member, and optimistic about the long-term potential for our multi-generational arrangement. Looking back now, I realized that this golden period had represented the peak of Jessica and Brad's genuine gratitude for the opportunities I'd provided, before their perspective had begun shifting toward viewing my independence and property ownership as obstacles to their own advancement rather than as examples of what was possible through hard work and strategic planning. The transition from appreciation to entitlement had been so gradual that I'd initially missed the warning signs, interpreting their increasing suggestions about building efficiency and my living arrangements as natural expressions of concern, rather than evidence of a systematic campaign to reposition themselves as the primary decision-makers for property I'd spent decades building and paying for. But standing in my penthouse that morning, reviewing the mounting pressure I'd been receiving to consider the basement apartment, I was beginning to understand that the golden period of our family relationship had ended, and that Jessica and Brad's true feelings about my independence were about to be revealed in ways that would change our family dynamics forever. Sometimes the people who seem most appreciative of your generosity are actually calculating how to take control of it. Jessica and Brad were about to learn that the woman they'd begun treating as a property management obstacle was actually someone with the business expertise, legal knowledge, and personal determination to ensure they regretted ever suggesting that a 70-year-old real estate developer should accept basement living in her own building. Standing in my penthouse that morning, still processing Jessica and Brad's increasingly coordinated campaign to convince me that the basement apartment would be better suited for my current needs, I felt the weight of 30 years of financial sacrifice and emotional investment being systematically dismissed by people who'd never had to build anything themselves. But to understand the true scope of their betrayal, you need to know about the hundreds of thousands of dollars, countless hours of mentoring, and unwavering support I'd provided throughout Jessica's entire life. Investments that had made her current success possible while creating the very entitlement that was now being used to justify warehousing me in the basement of my own building. The financial foundation for Jessica's privileged life had been established before she'd even been born? When Robert and I had made the decision to structure our real estate development business specifically to support a family lifestyle that would provide our future children with every possible advantage while teaching them the values and work ethic that had made our success possible. From the moment Jessica had taken her first breath in 1978, she'd been the beneficiary of a comprehensive support system that had been designed to ensure she never had to worry about basic financial security, while developing the skills and knowledge necessary for building her own professional achievements. Every decision Robert and I had made about our business operations, property investments, and personal lifestyle had been influenced by our determination to provide Jessica with opportunities that would allow her to reach her full potential. The first major financial investment in Jessica's future had been the creation of her education trust fund. Established when she'd been 6 months old with an initial deposit of $25,000 and monthly contributions of $500 that had been designed to ensure she could attend the finest schools available regardless of tuition increases or changes in our business income. By the time Jessica had graduated from high school, the trust fund had grown to over $180,000, providing a solid foundation for her undergraduate and graduate education expenses. We want Jessica to have educational opportunities that aren't limited by financial considerations, Robert had explained to our financial advisor when we'd established the trust fund. Margaret and I both benefited from excellent educations, and we understand that investing in our daughter's intellectual development is the most valuable gift we can provide. But beyond the formal education fund, Robert and I had also invested heavily in Jessica's cultural enrichment and character development through carefully planned experiences that had been designed to broaden her perspective and develop the kind of sophisticated worldview that would serve her well in whatever career she chose to pursue. The international travel that had been an integral part of Jessica's childhood hadn't been typical family vacations, but rather educational expeditions that had been planned with the same attention to detail and cultural authenticity that characterized our professional restoration projects. By age 16, Jessica had visited 15 countries, not as a tourist, but as a student of architecture, history, and cultural traditions that would inform her understanding of how different societies approached problem-solving and community development. Jessica's travel experiences are giving her a global perspective that most young people never develop. Her high school guidance counselor had observed. Her essays about cultural differences and architectural traditions demonstrate sophisticated thinking that will serve her well in whatever field she chooses to pursue. The European study tours that had been the highlight of Jessica's high school summers had each cost between $8,000 and $12,000, representing substantial investments in experiences that couldn't be purchased through conventional educational programs. These tours had been organized around specific architectural and cultural themes that had been chosen to complement Jessica's academic development while exposing her to historical preservation techniques and cultural traditions that would enhance her appreciation for quality craftsmanship and authentic design. Mom and Dad, these study tours have taught me that real education happens when you can see and touch historical artifacts rather than just reading about them in textbooks, Jessica had said after returning from a 3-week architectural study program in Italy. Understanding how Renaissance builders solved engineering problems by examining their actual work is completely different from studying diagrams in a classroom. The Italian tour had been particularly significant because it had exposed Jessica to the restoration techniques and historical preservation principles that had influenced Robert's and my approach to property development. She'd studied with master craftsmen who'd been maintaining Renaissance buildings for generations, learned about traditional materials and construction methods, and developed an appreciation for the patience and skill required for authentic historical preservation. Jessica's Italian study experience has given her knowledge about traditional building techniques that most adults never acquire, Robert had observed after reviewing her detailed journal from the trip. Her understanding of how historical preservation contributes to cultural continuity shows remarkable maturity for someone her age. The domestic educational enrichment had been equally comprehensive and expensive, with private tutoring in subjects that interested Jessica, specialized summer programs at prestigious universities, and participation in academic competitions that had required extensive travel and coaching. The total cost of Jessica's supplementary education had exceeded $45,000 during her high school years alone, but Robert and I had viewed these expenses as essential investments in her intellectual development and competitive positioning for college admissions. We want Jessica to have every possible advantage when she applies to college, I'd explained to friends who'd questioned our substantial investment in private tutoring and enrichment programs. The academic landscape is incredibly competitive, and we need to ensure Jessica can demonstrate excellence in multiple areas rather than just basic competency. The private college counseling that had guided Jessica's application process had cost an additional $15,000, but it had been worth every dollar when she'd been accepted to Harvard University with partial merit scholarships that had recognized her academic achievements and extracurricular accomplishments. The counseling had included extensive test preparation, essay coaching, and strategic guidance about course selection and volunteer activities that had positioned Jessica as exactly the kind of well-rounded candidate that elite universities sought. Jessica's acceptance to Harvard represents the culmination of years of careful preparation and substantial investment, her college counselor had noted. Her parents have provided opportunities that allowed her to develop into exactly the kind of student that top universities want to recruit. The Harvard undergraduate education that had been the foundation for Jessica's professional success had cost $240,000 over 4 years, even with the partial merit scholarships that had covered approximately 30% of the total expenses. The annual costs had included not just tuition and fees, but also housing, meal plans, textbooks, travel expenses, and the kind of social and cultural activities that had been essential for Jessica's integration into Harvard's sophisticated academic and social environment. Harvard is expensive, but it's also an investment in Jessica's entire future, Robert had said when we'd reviewed the annual education costs during Jessica's sophomore year. The connections she's making and the intellectual development she's experiencing will influence her career opportunities for the rest of her life. But the financial investment had been accompanied by ongoing emotional and practical support that had required substantial time and energy from both Robert and me. Throughout Jessica's college years, we'd maintained regular communication with her academic advisors, helped coordinate internship opportunities through our professional networks, and provided guidance about course selection and career planning that had ensured she maximized the value of her expensive education. "Mom and Dad, I don't know how to thank you for all the support you've provided," Jessica had said during her Harvard graduation ceremony. "Not just the financial support, but the guidance and encouragement that helped me navigate challenges and take advantage of opportunities I wouldn't have recognized on my own." The summer internship programs that had been crucial for Jessica's professional development had also required significant financial support, as most prestigious internships provided minimal compensation while expecting students to maintain professional wardrobes and living arrangements in expensive cities. Robert and I had spent over $25,000 supporting Jessica's summer internships at law firms in New York and Washington, D.C., understanding that these experiences were essential for her eventual law school applications and career networking. These internship experiences are giving Jessica practical knowledge about legal practice that will make her a much stronger law school candidate, I'd explained to Robert when we'd discussed the substantial costs involved in supporting her summer programs. The professional relationships she's developing and the hands-on experience she's gaining are worth far more than the money we're spending. The law school selection and application process had required another substantial investment in test preparation, application fees, and specialized counseling that had helped Jessica identify programs that would best serve her career goals while also providing the kind of prestigious credentials that would open doors throughout her professional life. Law school admissions are even more competitive than undergraduate admissions, the educational consultant we'd hired had explained. Jessica needs to demonstrate not just academic excellence, but also practical legal experience and clear career goals that align with each school's specific program strengths. The Boston University Law School education that had been the foundation for Jessica's legal career had cost $210,000 over 3 years, representing one of the most expensive legal programs in New England, but also one that had provided unparalleled training and networking opportunities. The law school costs had included not just tuition, but also specialized legal databases, professional development programs, and participation in moot court competitions that had enhanced Jessica's practical skills while building relationships with faculty members who would later provide career recommendations. Jessica's law school performance has been exceptional, her constitutional law professor had written in a recommendation letter. Her analytical thinking, writing skills, and courtroom presence suggest she'll be highly successful in whatever area of legal practice she chooses to pursue. But the law school investment had extended beyond formal educational expenses to include the substantial living costs and professional development expenses that had been necessary for Jessica to compete effectively in Boston's legal job market. Robert and I had provided an additional $75,000 in living support during Jessica's law school years, understanding that she needed to focus on academic excellence rather than working part-time jobs that would have compromised her study time and professional preparation. "We want Jessica to be able to concentrate completely on her legal education," Robert had explained when we'd discussed the additional living support. "The investment we're making in her professional preparation will pay dividends throughout her entire career." The bar exam preparation and early career support had required another $30,000 investment, as Jessica had needed specialized tutoring, professional development courses, and financial support during the months between law school, graduation, and securing her first legal position. The bar exam preparation alone had cost $8,000, but it had been essential for ensuring Jessica passed on her first attempt and could begin practicing law without delays that might have affected her career trajectory. The bar exam is just the beginning of Jessica's legal career, I'd said when reviewing the preparation costs. The investment we're making in her professional readiness will ensure she can start her career with confidence and competence that will serve her well in building a successful practice. The establishment of Jessica's legal practice had involved an additional $85,000 investment in office equipment, legal databases, professional liability insurance, and the kind of infrastructure that had been necessary for attracting sophisticated clients who expected high-quality legal services. Robert and I had understood that starting a legal practice required substantial upfront investment, and we'd been willing to provide the financial foundation that would allow Jessica to build her career without being handicapped by inadequate resources. Starting a legal practice is like starting any other business, Robert had observed when we'd discussed the practice establishment costs. Jessica needs professional quality equipment and systems if she wants to compete effectively with established firms and build a reputation for excellence. The office space that had been crucial for Jessica's professional credibility had been particularly expensive, as corporate law required prestigious addresses and sophisticated facilities that would impress the kind of high-value clients necessary for building a profitable practice. The initial lease deposits, office furniture, and technology systems had cost over $40,000, but they'd been essential for positioning Jessica as a serious professional rather than just another new attorney struggling to establish credibility. Jessica's office environment needs to reflect the quality of legal services she provides, I'd explained when we'd toured potential office spaces. Corporate clients expect their attorneys to demonstrate success and stability through their professional presentation. The professional development and continuing education that had been necessary for Jessica to maintain her competitive edge in Boston's legal market had also required ongoing financial support from Robert and me. Specialized legal seminars, professional conferences, and networking events had cost approximately $15,000 annually, but they'd been essential for Jessica to stay current with legal developments while building relationships with other professionals who could provide referrals and collaboration opportunities. The legal profession requires constant learning and relationship building, Jessica had explained when discussing her professional development needs. The seminars and conferences you've supported have been crucial for my career advancement and client development efforts. But beyond the formal financial investments, Robert and I had also provided countless hours of mentoring and guidance that had helped Jessica navigate professional challenges and make strategic decisions that had enhanced her career development. The business knowledge and relationship-building skills that we'd shared had been based on decades of experience in building and managing successful professional practices. Mom and Dad, the business advice you've provided has been just as valuable as the financial support, Jessica had said during one of our career planning conversations. Understanding how to manage client relationships, develop professional networks, and build long-term business success has been essential for my practice development. The networking support that Robert and I had provided through our own professional relationships had been particularly valuable for Jessica's career advancement. Our connections in Boston's business and professional communities had led to client referrals, collaboration opportunities, and professional recognition that would have taken Jessica years to develop independently. Margaret and Robert Sullivan's recommendation carries significant weight in Boston's professional community, one of Jessica's early clients had noted. Their reputation for integrity and excellence makes their endorsement valuable for any young professional. The wedding expenses that Robert and I had covered when Jessica had married Brad had represented another substantial investment in Jessica's personal happiness and social standing. The $50,000 we'd contributed toward the wedding and honeymoon had ensured that Jessica could celebrate her marriage in the elegant style that reflected her professional success, while also demonstrating our family's commitment to supporting important life milestones. "This wedding is perfect," Jessica had said during the reception at the Boston Harbor Hotel. Having the celebration in such a beautiful setting with all our family and professional friends shows how much our relationships mean to everyone who supported us. The honeymoon in Europe that had been part of our wedding gift had also served as a cultural and professional development opportunity, with Jessica and Brad visiting law firms and business development organizations that had enhanced their understanding of international professional practices while providing networking opportunities that would benefit their careers. The European honeymoon has given us insights into international business practices that we never would have gained otherwise, Brad had reported after they'd returned. The professional connections we made and the cultural knowledge we gained will influence our career development for years to come. The ongoing financial support that Robert and I had provided throughout Jessica's early career years had included everything from professional wardrobe expenses and continuing education costs to the below-market rent we'd charged when Jessica and Brad had moved into the brownstone. The cumulative value of our financial contributions to Jessica's success had exceeded $750,000 over 30 years, representing a substantial investment in her personal and professional development. The support you and Dad have provided has made every aspect of my success possible, Jessica had acknowledged during one of our family financial discussions. From childhood education through law school and career establishment, you've eliminated financial barriers that prevent most people from reaching their full potential. But more than financial support, Robert and I had also provided emotional encouragement and practical guidance that had helped Jessica overcome challenges and maintain confidence during difficult periods of her personal and professional development. The mentoring relationship we'd maintained had been based on genuine interest in her success rather than expectations about future returns on our investment. Jessica has been fortunate to have parents who understand that supporting your children's success requires both financial resources and emotional wisdom, her law school advisor had observed. The combination of practical support and personal guidance has enabled her to develop into an exceptionally capable professional. The professional networking that Robert and I had facilitated through our own business relationships had provided Jessica with access to opportunities and connections that would have been impossible for her to develop independently during her early career years. Our reputation in Boston's business community had opened doors and created credibility that had accelerated Jessica's professional advancement. Having Margaret and Robert Sullivan as professional references provides immediate credibility, one of Jessica's early employer had noted. Their reputation for integrity and business excellence makes their endorsement valuable for any young professional they recommend. The property investment guidance that I'd provided when Jessica had been developing her own real estate portfolio had been based on decades of experience in Boston's property markets and had helped her avoid costly mistakes while identifying opportunities that had enhanced her financial security. The successful renovation project in Somerville had generated positive cash flow while also providing Jessica with practical experience in property management. Mom's guidance about real estate investment has been invaluable, Jessica had said, after completing her first property renovation. Understanding how to evaluate properties, manage renovation projects, and handle tenant relationships has given me skills and income sources that will benefit me throughout my life. The childcare support that Robert and I had provided when Jessica and Brad had needed assistance with work-life balance had included everything from evening babysitting during professional events to weekend care that had allowed them to focus on career development activities. This practical support had been particularly valuable during Jessica's early career years when client demands and professional obligations had required flexible scheduling. Having grandparents who can provide reliable childcare support has been essential for our career advancement, Brad had acknowledged. Knowing that our children are with family members who love them allows us to focus on professional responsibilities without worrying about childcare arrangements. The financial planning advice that Robert and I had provided based on our own experience in building and managing substantial wealth had helped Jessica and Brad make strategic decisions about saving, investing, and spending that had enhanced their long-term financial security. Our guidance about property ownership, retirement planning, and risk management had been based on lessons learned through decades of successful business operations. The financial planning knowledge you've shared has helped us make much better decisions about money management, Jessica had said during one of our quarterly financial reviews. Understanding how to balance current spending with long-term wealth building has been crucial for our financial security. The professional development opportunities that Robert and I had created through our own business networks had provided Jessica with access to speaking engagements, publication opportunities, and professional recognition that had enhanced her reputation within Boston's legal community. These opportunities had been particularly valuable for building the kind of professional profile that attracted high-value clients and collaboration partners. Margaret and Robert Sullivan's professional networks have provided opportunities that would have taken me years to develop independently, Jessica had acknowledged. The speaking engagements and professional recognition they've facilitated have been crucial for my career advancement. The comprehensive support system that Robert and I had created for Jessica's success had been designed not just to provide immediate assistance, but also to teach her the principles and practices that would enable her to create similar opportunities for her own children. We'd viewed our investment in Jessica as part of a multi-generational approach to wealth building and family development. The most important gift we can give Jessica isn't just financial support, but also the knowledge and values that will enable her to create success for her own family, Robert had explained during one of our family planning discussions. Teaching her how to build and manage wealth is more valuable than just providing money. The business mentoring that Robert and I had provided throughout Jessica's career development had included guidance about professional ethics, client relationship, management, and long-term business strategy that had been based on principles we'd developed through decades of successful business operations. This mentoring had been particularly valuable for helping Jessica navigate complex professional situations that required both technical legal knowledge and business wisdom. The business guidance Mom and Dad have provided has been just as important as my formal legal education, Jessica had said during one of our professional development conversations. Understanding how to build sustainable business relationships and maintain professional integrity has been essential for my long-term success. The legacy planning that Robert and I had undertaken had been designed to ensure that Jessica would inherit not just financial assets, but also the knowledge and relationships necessary for continuing our family's tradition of business success and community contribution. We'd structured our estate planning to provide Jessica with both immediate security and long-term opportunities for wealth building. Our goal is to provide Jessica with resources and knowledge that will enable her to build on what we've created rather than just consuming it, I'd explained to our estate planning attorney. The most valuable inheritance we can provide is the capability to create continued success. Standing in my penthouse that morning, surrounded by the results of 40 years of hard work and strategic planning, I'd had no understanding that the daughter who'd been the beneficiary of over $750,000 in financial support and countless hours of mentoring was viewing my continued residence in the penthouse as an obstacle to her own advancement rather than as the natural result of the success that had made her privileged life possible. The business knowledge, financial resources, legal expertise, and personal determination that Jessica was trying to manipulate through guilt and pressure were actually going to become the foundation for teaching her the most expensive lesson of her professional life about gratitude, respect, and the consequences of trying to control someone whose generosity had made her success possible. Sometimes the people who've benefited most from your sacrifices are the first to forget how they achieved their current position. Jessica and Brad were about to discover that trying to warehouse the woman who'd invested over $750,000 in their success was the biggest mistake they'd ever made in their entitled lives. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.